What's up, guys? This is Tony with Salt Strong, and I wanted to answer a question on casting. We had a question come in about casting in tight quarters. You know, if you're in a creek such as something like this where you don't really have room, you don't have too much room to really do a sidearm cast, or you might have some trees up overhead where you can't really do a dart cast. There are a couple tricks you can do to get your lure where you want it to go. Now, first off, this example here, we do have space overhead, so the best thing to do is to just do a dart cast, and that's where you just bring the rod straight back and do a quick snap and get that lure down to where you want it to go. Now, also, when you're retrieving in areas like this, it's best to keep your rod tip down. That keeps your line down. That way, if you do hook into a fish, that fish will go underneath the brush, and that'll keep your line out of the trees when you're keeping it down. If you keep it up and you hook into a fish in tight quarters like this, your line can get wrapped around some of the tree limbs that are sticking out, so you definitely don't want that to happen. Now, if you do happen to have some trees overhead where you can't cast like that, what I like to do is get as close to one side as possible, depending on which side you like to do a sidearm cast. I cast to my right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get as far to the left as I can to give me space on the right side so that I can do a sidearm cast right here. So as you can see, I'm sort of tucked close to the trees now. I can do a sidearm cast and skip that lure down into the area. Now, another thing, if you do a sidearm cast, if you don't happen to have enough room behind you, what you can do is do a little flip of the lure like this. So you're really not even moving your rod back. You're not rearing your rod back to snap it forward. You're just doing a flip and then releasing. So quick example here. Let me go ahead and get back to the side of the creek, left-hand side, so I can cast to my right. So as you watch, I'm just going to do a quick flip and cast that lure out. Obviously, you don't want to catch the trees, so it does take a little bit of practice when you are doing this, but casting is super important, especially if you're trying to get your lure into the strike zone. You could be a foot or two off and miss out on getting that fish to strike. So let's go ahead and show you again the little flip here. You just basically just swing the lure around the rod tip, full circle, cast it out like so. Now, a couple other things you could do if you're limited on space and you can't really make a full cast is to either flip or pitch your lure into an area. Now, this doesn't get too much distance on it depending on your lure. That's why we really recommend using 10-pound braid, because it gives you a little bit more of an advantage when casting. But you're basically going to bring your lure down about to the length of where your reel's at, like so. Open the bail. You're just going to let that lure sort of swing, pendulum, and snap it out, like so. You can see I got about 30 feet on that cast without even really having to do much effort. Now, the last thing you can do, this is sort of a last resort. I don't recommend this one, but it can be done, is to do sort of like a bow and arrow or a slingshot cast. And what you're doing is you're holding your lure in one hand below the hook point. You don't want to grab above the hook point, because when you release this lure, it's going to slingshot forward. So as you can see, bringing the rod tip back, you don't want to, do a really sharp bend in the rod. Just have a nice normal bend in the rod tip. You're going to open your bail, hold the line, and you're going to snap that lure out like so, and it's going to go forward. Now, as you see there, it didn't really go too far. That's why I really don't recommend this one. It's kind of, useless if you're trying to get some distance. That's why I would really prefer to do a flip or a pitch like so. And you can see there, I got more distance that way. And in case you're wondering, the gear I'm using here, this is our slot machine rod. This is our custom rod we sell at our shop page at fishstrong.com, and also at our tackle shop in Winter Haven if you happen to be in town. And the reel that I'm using is a 2500 Shimano Stratic FL 10-pound Power Pro. Got 20-pound leader up here with our Slam Shady Mulligan paddle tail, which is a 4-inch paddle tail rigged on a 3/0 1/8 ounce Haas Helix hook. So again, not very heavy of a lure, but I'm able to cast it pretty good distance in this tight, small little creek right here. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention when you are fishing in tight quarters like this is, even if the wind isn't blowing on the surface of the water, there's still wind up above you. So if you go to cast and you're not factoring in that wind that's up above, the treetops, your lure is going to go into the trees. So definitely keep that in mind. Pay attention to which direction the wind's coming from. That way, you know, when you make your cast, you can compensate and get that lure out to where you need it to be and not in the trees. So hopefully these tips can help you out if you do happen to be fishing an area where you have tight quarters such as this. You know, it can definitely help to be able to cast effectively, and a lot of fish like to hold in areas like this because a lot of people don't really fish them because it's a little bit difficult to fish. So if you have that advantage, it can definitely help. Now I'm out here actually filming an insider report for our insider members, and what I do is I go out and I show what I'm doing, the tactics I'm using to get on fish based on the seasons, you know, the time of year, time of day, what tide it is. All those factors come into play to help you start catching more fish. And if you're interested in that, definitely head over to saltstrong.com/pricing. Check out our insider club where we guarantee you'll start catching more fish in less time. So definitely be sure to check that out. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below.